To mark Neurodiversity Celebration Week, we've put together some of the most memorable, insightful, and powerful moments that we've had on the podcast so far. The reality is that neurodivergent people have had to navigate a world that was not built for them. Yet time and again, they have demonstrated extraordinary persistence, strength, and creativity. From overcoming barriers to redefining success on their own terms, these stories are a testament to their resilience. One of our very first guests was actor, ADHD father, Kit Harington. Kit and I shared a number of pieces in common, I guess, with struggles with mental health and addiction. And he spoke really beautifully about how he used alcohol to manage his social anxiety, which I know a lot of you will relate to.
The only example I've got where I got confused between character and me and it was only for a long period of time, I think, was with the Jon Snow stuff, because I was playing a character who was the epitome of goodness and honesty and truth. And in my life, I didn't feel like that at all.
Okay.
People would treat me like the character who was a hero and good. But in my life, personally, I didn't feel like that at all. And that, I think, had some kind of a bit of psychological kind of scarring.
And what was going on that you felt like this?
Well, I mean, I was drinking a lot, effectively. Like I was sort of going through addiction and everything that entails, and hiding things and all sorts. And so that was the polar opposite of the character I was playing, who couldn't tell a lie.
Okay.
Who was goodness personified, who was honesty. And me, Kit, was not that. My mum used to say, like, you held a glass like it was the most important thing in the room. And that's a hard thing to let go of. I tried going to rehab once before, 4 years earlier, and kind of entered the rehab drunk, sobered up in there and went, oh no, not you guys in the circle. Left. Oh no, thank you. And I left that pretty quick and said, I'll try and deal with this by myself, which didn't work. After about 4 years, it kind of crumbled, as it does. So this time I was sort of ready and went to rehab in America. They identified me as being ADD and took it seriously, realised that my sort of life was hinging on this. And luckily this time it was the right place at the right time. I managed to kind of forge a new life from there.
Are you still socially anxious?
I am, but I know how to deal with it now.
Okay.
And I think I project some confidence, but I'm walking into a room, a party or whatever, when I was younger. You know, I remember in my like sort of drama school days, I'd be at a party, and even with the alcohol, I would find myself walking out of the room, going and finding a cupboard and standing in the cupboard and just breathing, or hiding under a bed. And so of course alcohol was like my go-to. It's the only thing that was kind of helping. It's the only thing that meant that I could function socially.
Kit Harington wasn't the only guest who discussed social anxiety. We also spoke with Tylan Grant, Hollyoaks actor, and I loved talking to him about A, what is small talk, and B, some of his tips and tricks on dealing with social anxiety. We didn't have any small talk.
No, what's that? What is that? I don't know what that is.
What is it?
What is small talk and why is it small? Sometimes I go into interactions feeling like I am controlling the amount of fun we have. Maybe that's an autistic thing.
I think so.
I'm like, and if someone I've just met, we might not even know each other that well. Maybe they're a bit quiet. I'm like, oh, okay, so I need to overcompensate and I need to yap because they're not having fun right now. And that's because it's all on me and it's all on me. And I leave feeling like, that was so bad. And then instead of being like, wait a second, did I even like that person? Like, was I even having a good time, or was I just worrying about controlling the environment? I don't know.
Whoa, socializing is hard.
It's hard. Because another thing that is like not spoken about, but I think actually I did see it talked about online recently was, I'm pretty sure it was a neurotypical person. It was just someone, they tweeted, I don't like when I'm talking to someone and they have to relate everything back to them. And I really was like, okay, so I'm going to spiral for the next 3 hours, because that's pretty much the foundation of every conversation I have. Is that's how I relate to people. That's how I understand things. And I never mean it to be to come across as me being disinterested. It's me being like, I get it, you know? That's how conversations work in my brain. But apparently that's not polite. So sometimes I think my interests bleed into conversations, but that's me trying to relate. It's not me trying to take over.
Yeah, or make it about you.
Yeah, no, that's never.
It's, hey, yeah,
it's me
I
trying
agree.
to be like, I understand what you're saying, or you're
Yes.
seen, because this also happened to me, or I also like this. But another thing that really helps when I'm going into social situations, like if it's like a friend's birthday or I'm going to like a gathering, I always give myself permission to leave after half an hour. Before I go out, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for half an hour to 45 minutes, show my face, and then I'm going to go home. And I don't want to jinx it, but I usually end up being like one of the last people to leave. I don't know how. That's just what I found.
Thanks, Tylan. Absolutely wise beyond his years. If you're on social media, I am pretty sure you will have come across our next guests, Rich and Rox, known on social media as ADHD Love. Their videos and their work, books, content helps so many people, and especially in terms of navigating relationships with ND partners. This story, asking Rich and Rox about how they support each other, I just thought was such a beautiful clip in how to really nurture a relationship with an ADHDer.
My life story is, without Rich, I don't work very well as a human, in a relationship, as a business person. I don't work very well without him. And I'm not ashamed to admit that I need a teammate. At work, as a co-parent, in business, I don't function well alone. Put me in a team, the yin to my yang, and it's bloody amazing. So do you know what? If you look at that and go, that's not empowering because you can't do it all alone, I'm in awe.
And Rich, can you give me 3 tips for being in a relationship with someone who's ADHD?
So, most important one for me would be treat things with curiosity and not judgment. They will do things that if you are not ADHD, you will find quite strange, quite maybe nonsensical. And rather than judge, because that's what they've been used to their whole life, even little micro behaviors like rolling your eyes and stuff like that can be quite hurtful. That's quite a big one for Rox. Ask questions, and ask questions from a place of, I really want to try and understand this, rather than a judgmental. Little things like tone really do matter. The other thing is, when they come up with a new idea or a new hobby or a new life purpose, which will happen frequently, jump into the fantasy with them. So don't criticize and say, no, that's a ridiculous idea, and what about all this other stuff? Because again, it's probably a place of judgment. So jump into the fantasy with them, have a discussion about the name of the soap making business or resin company or whatever it is. Let it percolate, and then maybe have a decision whether, because you'll find complete genius in a lot of it.
Jumping into the fantasy, I love that from Rich. We've talked about ADHD, we've talked about autism. There are other more misunderstood, unknown neurotypes, and one of those is Tourette's. And one of our guests, Josh Hughes, aka the Tourette's Barber, you may have seen his amazing content and swearing haircuts that have brought a lot of humor and light and truth to seeing somebody living with Tourette's. There is also a dark side, and Josh paints that picture very starkly.
The worst thing for me is the racial slurs, 100%. And it's something that I wanted to kind of talk about, because I'm not saying like, oh, poor us with Tourette's, we say racist things. I'm not racist at all. And I don't want to say racist things. And it's got me into real trouble at times. And that is when I want the ground to swallow me up. Like I remember when I think I must have been about 18, maybe 19. I was at a party and these couple of guys came up to me, and they were 4 or 5 black guys. And I said to them straight away, just because I know myself, and especially at the time, I knew that I was very vocal. And I said to them straight away, I was like, guys, just so you know, I've got Tourette's. If I say anything, I don't mean what I'm saying. And and they were like, cool, whatever. And they kind of didn't acknowledge really what I was trying to say to them, but I didn't want to keep pushing it because nothing was wrong. And then a bit of an altercation happened between them or someone else. And I just kept saying the N-word. And I got beaten the shit out of. And the security guard was there, was also black, and I could not stop saying the N-word. Kept saying it. I don't think he knew whether to help me or not, because I kept saying it. Then I think he thought, he's literally getting his head kicked in. He can't stop saying it. So he did drag me up and pulled me up and helped me. And then these guys after, like, oh, sorry, man, we didn't know. And I just felt like, F you. I told you. But then again, from their point of view, they'd probably look at me saying, this white boy was calling us the N-word, and I'm not going to react. But I had just said that I had Tourette's. But then again, I'm saying the N-word, which is a really, really insulting thing to say.
Oh, it's so tough.
It's a really tough one. And like, I wasn't annoyed at them at the time.
You're slightly smiling saying it, but I know behind your eyes, like, that's
really uncomfortable for kids.
That's an impossible situation.
What you meant to do. The best advice I give to anyone is, even if you're on a train, like I got the train in this morning and I wasn't too vocally twitchy this morning, so it wasn't really needed. But if you're on a carriage, even if it's a couple of people, I just let people know.
Yeah.
Just drop a subtle hint, just to let you know, I've got Tourette's. If you hear me making any weird noises or swearing or shouting, just don't worry, don't mind me.
I think Josh's story highlights just how dangerous and damaging a lack of awareness and understanding can be for some of these neurotypes. Dyspraxia is another neurotype that doesn't get a lot of airtime. It's sometimes known as developmental coordination disorder. It does affect 10% of the population, including 2 of our production team. And we invited Jamie Lambert onto the hidden 20% to discuss his experiences with it. How do you explain dyspraxia to somebody?
Firstly, I think I'm asked this question a lot. And I think the first thing that I say is no one person is the same. So dyspraxia for me might be a different thing than other people. That's the whole point of being neurodivergent, right? Hand-eye coordination comes into it a lot for me. So I do a lot of yoga to help with that. I find it really, when I first started doing it, lifting one arm and then the other leg was impossible. Like I really didn't, it just doesn't connect in my mind. Okay. Now I'm great at it. It's really helped. Sequencing is another thing. We don't have the same sequencing pathways that most people have. So finding ways to sequence in your own way is a really good thing to do.
And when you say sequencing, do you mean, obviously you mean the order of things, but give me some examples of how that manifests sequencing wise.
Getting ready.
Okay.
In the morning can feel like an enormous uphill battle. Tying shoelaces, being, putting buttons on, and like even just like things like drying my hair, they feel like an enormous challenge.
Flat pack furniture.
Oh, I have had some awful experiences putting things together in my house, and this is
DIY.
A classic example of this is that I love gardening. It's one of my things. And in the pandemic, I bought an arch for my garden that I had to put together. It took me 5 hours, and I had to do it outside. And I remember my neighbors at the time kept popping their head over the fence and be like, "Any further?" And I was like, "Nope."
Maths, numbers,
really interesting, this one, because I'm now really good at it. Being a producer, you would hope so. Terrible. I was terrible in school. I really was. And this is what I think is the most key thing. I was brilliant at things that I was interested in. Languages. I'm fluent in Spanish. I did a degree in Spanish. Music. Great. Drama. Great. Maths.
Putting on the odd theatre show. Pretty
love
good.
That. Yeah. Love that. Maths. Hated it. hated it. My dad, great mathematician. I mean, really, genuinely, like a generational mathematician. And the arguments we'd have after school when he was helping with my homework, because he was like, I don't understand why you're not getting this because you're clever. And I don't understand why you're not getting it because he's brilliant. But all it was actually interest. And the minute I started running a business, and I mean, I live in Excel spreadsheets now.
Brilliant.
I love them. I live in them.
They're the best.
And Eliza, my business partner, hates them, which makes us great together. But I love them, and I love numbers, and I love seeing things add up, and I can do it all in my head now. You say to me, here is a show, this is the cast, this is the venue we're going to do it in, and I will be able to tell you whether it's going to work or not financially without looking at a spreadsheet now. Me at 14, no way. It's no way. And so I think that's another thing about being neurodivergent. My experience of it is that if I was interested in stuff, I'd be brilliant at it. If I wasn't interested, I'd be terrible.
That really rings true for me. And speaking of another underrepresented condition, let's talk dyscalculia. Actually, 6 million people in the UK are believed to be dyscalculic. And we invited Olympic track athlete Adele Tracy onto the Hidden 20% to discuss what it means for her.
Dyscalculia is, I would say it's essentially dyslexia for numbers. So for me, that presents in maybe not able to read the actual number, or they move around a lot for me. I really struggle to tell the time on a non-digital clock. It probably...
Hands, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Hands, yeah.
So it's not just the figure numbers in that sense, but even translating like an analog clock to words.
Yeah, and 24-hour clocks, which is ironic because I'm an athlete, so I'm always working on distance, times, clocks. Yeah, so it's a really challenging environment sometimes.
Dyslexia with numbers is a great way, I guess, of trying to help people to understand what dyscalculia is. Although I'm not sure actually 100% of people even understand what dyslexia is. Who better to help discuss and fight for that than Kate Griggs? She got dyslexic thinking as a skill on LinkedIn and into the English dictionary. Here's what she had to say.
If you look at dyslexic thinking, the fact that we're brilliant at seeing the big picture, we're brilliant at spotting patterns, we're brilliant at emotional intelligence and connecting and storytelling, communication. So if you put all of those things together, it makes the perfect entrepreneur. I think also we are experts at failing. We fail from a very young age. So it's something that is really in our wheelhouse. And I think you have to, as an entrepreneur, you've got to be prepared to fail. You've got to take risks. So I think all of those things together are why we know that 40% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic. So if you look at any of the if you look at Richard Branson, who we work very closely with, Richard's model at Virgin is to go into an industry and see what he can do to disrupt it, to make it better for people. Most entrepreneurs aren't led by money. That's not what drives them. It actually is about making a difference, making something better. Well, you'll know with everything that you've done. So we do a lot of work with GCHQ, and they actively recruit people who are and other neurodiversities as well, because they recognize they need to have people who think differently. And in their 24/7 area, which is where they've got spies who are like looking across lots of information. They pride themselves on having people in there that can spot patterns, that can see things before others can't. They're not asked to, so what was your sequential way of actually getting to that? They've recognized a terror threat or recognized a cyber threat. And those things, if people can find an answer quickly, we just need to know they find an answer quickly and act on it.
All the best, most famous spies and detectives did it differently.
Yeah. You want to get there quicker.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through the linear process. You want to get there quicker.
Yeah.
Kate's work is so important and brilliant on shaping the views around dyslexia. And when we focus on the positives, that is really important. But we must be careful that we also don't negate talking about the negatives. Because if we just talk about the positives, we do lean into that superpower narrative. We had Marcus Brigstock, comedian, on the show, and he spoke absolutely beautifully, eloquently, specifically about this topic.
I'm cautious about the kind of neurodiversity is our superpower thing.
Don't go down that
because
route.
I don't agree with it. Because also for loads of people, it's a source of terrible pain.
100%.
And a gateway into sometimes social isolation, sometimes into dysfunction, sometimes into addiction.
How about prison, suicide,
100%.
unemployment, divorce, etc.
Absolutely,
mental health.
Absolutely, yeah. So we have to be, I feel like I want to be very cautious about that thing of like, it's not a superpower, but it is also, for me, a really helpful gateway into, well, this is what I've made a really, really, never mind successful, really happy career doing. You know, it's brought me loads of joy and some difficulties.
Well said, Marcus. One of the biggest conversations that we've seen recently is the rise in ADHD diagnosis. And actually, some people saying that's down to social media, some people saying that it's just a trend. We asked forensic psychologist and Big Brother winner Ali Bromley to break it down for us.
I think something has happened with ADHD, ASD, where people are starting to learn more about it. And then people, therefore, are starting to recognize traits in themselves and are then going in higher volumes to get support. And then it feels like there's almost like this backlash of, oh, well, you know, the old tropes that you hear, like, well, we didn't have that when I was younger. We all just coped. And I'm like, yeah, because you didn't know how to spot it. It was there. It just didn't have a name for it. People just struggled and weren't able to access support.
Yep.
But I think some of that thinking is still in kind of some of the medical fields. There's definitely a reluctance to acknowledge what it is. But, you know, I think that's also clouded by a lot of like self-diagnosis, social media diagnosis, TikTok experts talking about various traits that are probably not at all associated with these conditions. And overall, it's leading to a picture of misinformation. And medical professionals are no different to other people. They also are absorbing some of that information as well.
Speaking of social media, one of the most damaging narratives out there is that ADHD is caused by poor diet. Sarah Ann Macklin, award-winning nutritionist, sets the record straight. I see on the internet people saying that bad diet causes ADHD.
It does not cause ADHD.
Can good diet and good nutrition improve neurodivergence?
I believe so, yes.
Can bad nutrition or poor diet cause neurodivergence?
It can't cause it, but it will worsen it. If you've got ADHD, it doesn't just come on because you've got a bad diet. It's something that you are born with, but a bad diet can massively affect how much you're concentrating. So if you're living on ultra-processed foods, loads of alcohol, sleepless nights, you're already more agitated. Like somebody who hasn't got a ADHD will already feel they can't concentrate. If you add ADHD and all of these things into the mix, you're going to be like 10 times worse than that normal person that can't focus.
What do you think are the principles, I guess, diet, nutrition-wise, to help a neurodivergent brain?
Omega-3 fatty acids.
Boom.
And I really want to kind of counterbalance by saying make sure it is the oily fish. So a lot of people who are a plant-based diet will say, well, I'm eating my omega-3 fatty acids. And they are, but they're eating not the longer chains. They're eating the shorter chains.
Okay.
And so this is like a little bit of a difference. So if you are a plant-based eater, please supplement with an algae supplement. So the reason how fish get these oils in them is because they eat the algae.
Amazing.
And that's how it's transferred to us. You can only find EPA and DHA in oily fish. Now, many years ago, we could eat these shorter chain fatty acids that were in walnuts and chia seeds and all the plant foods that we're talking about. And what would happen is it would easily be transferred into these longer chains. Over evolution, we've become very lazy and we've lost the enzyme to do that. So it now shares it with the enzyme of omega-6.
Wow. We as human beings, our genetic makeup, our bodies now
lost that
have
enzyme.
Lost an enzyme.
To translate this shorter chain omega-3 fatty acid into the long one. So now it shares it with omega-6. You know, if we had a very balanced diet of omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, it'd be fine, but we don't. Something that I think I really want to make people who are aware of with neurodivergent brains is your gut microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, really essential that you try to harness that as much as possible. And I'm going to talk about this within kind of the mental health sector, which is something that I also do a lot of research in and I'm very, very passionate about, the kind of mind and the gut connection. You know, 90% of our serotonin and how we feel is made within our gut. So a lot of people think it's made within our brains. It's not. It crosses our blood-brain barrier, which is really, really key. So fostering our gut health. So if you're somebody who, and I'm kind of now making this into the bigger picture thinking, but if you do have dyslexia or neurodivergency, you might be quite an anxious person. You might feel quite stigmatized. You might feel that you're not good enough and therefore you create a lot of anxiety within yourself, which is going to be impacting your gut microbiome very significantly. So trying to focus on your gut microbiome is really, really important to kind of help support your mental health. So what I want to be saying is making sure you're having enough fiber, making sure you're having enough whole grains within your diet, making sure you're doing breathing exercises because that already puts you into rest and digest. So a lot of us just focus on food for our gut microbiome, but also breathing meditation is one of the biggest things that can help connect our vagus nerve, which runs from our stomachs and our guts all the way to our brains, our hypothalamus. And they talk to one another. And so when we're very, very stressed, it sends a signal straight through down to our vagus nerve into our gut, say, I'm really stressed. The gut microbiome shuts off. It's like we do not need blood coming to here at all to digest any food. We need blood going to the heart to pump cortisol. So your digestive system stops and it breaks. And you know, if you're running from a line, of course you do not need to be digesting your croissant that you ate at 9 o'clock this morning.
Yes.
So trying to do some breathing exercises around the nutrition that you're eating is really, really important because it helps calm sensors into your gut microbiome to say, actually, Sarah, we're okay. We don't need to be anxious. And then that helps the efficiency of the gut microbiome work better.
Some great advice there from Sarah Ann. Another really damaging narrative that's out there is the idea that you can only be one neurotype. So you can only be autistic or only be ADHD or only be dyslexic. This doesn't take into account the fact that there are a lot of co-occurring conditions. We asked psychologist and actual all-round legend, Dr. Tony Lloyd, to tell us the facts.
43% of people with ADHD also have dyslexia, which is another reason why they were often put in the special needs class and written off. Depending on which research paper you read, 29% of people with ADHD also meet the diagnostic criteria for autism. But some papers would argue that it's as high as 80%. Dyspraxia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, autism, ADHD, all often co-occur. Mm-hmm. You can have all of them, even. You can have traits of some of them, all of them. It's at what point something becomes impairing that it constitutes a diagnostic entity that represents an impairment.
The next myth we want to bust is a personal one. Can autistics love? My wonderful wife, Sam Branson, bravely came and sat in the hot seat. Here's what she had to say.
One of the myths that I've certainly learned and seen is that autistic people aren't capable of love. What's your experience been?
I don't believe that. I don't believe that because you can and do love really like with all your heart and more. This is the pressure that you put on yourself. So I don't believe that. I feel sorry for that label to be given. You show your love in so many ways. So I don't like that, actually.
No, I don't agree with. I don't agree with it. It doesn't ring true for me anyway. Love, absolutely not. Like, I know that I love, and I know that I can fall in love and be in love and really love, cherish and value and look after.
You definitely know how to love. So I don't ever want you to question that.
I'm really glad Sam and I did that episode. The feedback that we had was just really overwhelming and in a really positive way. And I guess as I sort of reflect back, because that episode took place around Neurodiversity Celebration Week last year. And if I think about how far things have come, it has been an amazing year. And there are so many amazing people and organizations doing such brilliant work in this space to spread awareness, build us towards some acceptance and understanding, and to educate society. It's brilliant. And we've been joined by wonderful guests who have shared how their brains work, the good and the bad. And we want to keep doing that. Whilst it is Neurodiversity Celebration Week, and there is a lot to celebrate, I do also need to bring us back down to earth. And I do also need to acknowledge that there are still 94% of autistic children being bullied at school. Suicide is still the second leading cause of death for autistics in this country. There are still up to 22-year waiting lists for ADHD assessments. There is still a worry on access to ADHD medication and shortages here in the UK. There are still 40% of neurodivergent adults that are unemployed. We've got to change this. And I really hope when it comes to Neurodiversity Celebration Week 2026, that some of these numbers are starting to come down. And I want to thank you, our supporters. I want to thank our guests. Oh my God, this sounds like an Oscars speech. For sticking with us, for being on this journey and lending your voice, your ears, your support, your sharing, because we've got to bring these numbers down. That is what really matters. Those metrics are really, really important. So yeah, let's work towards a better, even better Neurodiversity Celebration Week 2026.